I want to address the protesters for a moment, if I could. I think they were chanting, build a rail. It's been 17 years and $16 billion, and no rail has been built. So if you want to go protest somewhere, if you want to shout at someone, go to the governor's mansion. Go talk to Democrats in the legislature who have brought us this crappy project, right? So we've seen over the course of the last month what DOGE has exposed with regard to fraud, waste, and abuse. And we're done with it. And you know what? You're going to have people who love fraud, who love waste, who love trains to nowhere. But all of us up here, we do not love fraud, waste, and abuse. We are going to use the taxpayer money efficiently and effectively, and this is a boondoggle.
So I did not want to close out the year without talking at least one more time about what has arguably been my favorite news story of the entire year, which is, of course, the California high-speed rail, aka the train to nowhere, aka the most corrupt and laughably mismanaged infrastructure project in all of American history. And no, that is not exaggeratory or hyperbolic to say when you simply break down the numbers, because we did get an update this month that apparently Gavin Newsom, quite hilariously, has given up and surrendered in his legal battle against the Trump administration to restore federal funding for the project. Earlier this year, Trump announced that the federal taxpayer would no longer be footing the bill for this absolute boondoggle and disaster. California said, no, how dare you, right? How dare taxpayers in Mississippi not be forced to fund a literal train to nowhere that, first of all, very likely is not going to get built. But even if it does, at this point, as they're stating, will go from literally nowhere to nowhere, right? No offense, but from Bakersfield to Merced. And so it's pretty funny to talk about. But what I also want to discuss in the video is the fact that although California is no longer requesting federal funding, they are claiming they're still going to use their own funding to complete the project, which is, of course, hilarious on the surface. Coming from Mr. Gavin Newsom, I'm still going to build the train when he is facing a huge financial crisis and budgetary shortfall in his state, already worth billions of dollars, simply because he refuses to stop giving Medicaid benefits to illegal aliens. But folks, I think it goes a little bit deeper than them even just saying, oh, we're going to keep on building the train in order to send a middle finger to the Trump administration. No, I actually think, especially kind of understanding what we do now about Democrat politics, like look at Minnesota and how this stuff goes. No, let me just say, in preview, what we're going to talk about later in the video, the reason they want to keep building the train is so that they can keep paying out the corrupt contracts to these quote-unquote construction companies that very likely are major donors to Gavin Newsom and the Democrats, and in exchange, nothing gets done, right? In the same way Somalis are defrauding the government over in Minnesota, let me say, so are a bunch of contractors in the state of California. So let's break all of that down. And for those of you who maybe are not familiar, you haven't been up to speed with this high-speed rail situation or what's going on here, we'll explain that to you as well. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate it. And that said, I mean, for those of you who are not very familiar with what is the California high-speed rail, we'll allow Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to, I guess, break it down at least on the surface, and then I'll tell you a little bit more.
How big of a waste of money is this on a scale of 1 to 10?
So first, well, it's a 10. It's a 12, Rob. But this has been 16 years. $15 billion has been spent, and not one track has been laid for high-speed rail. California doesn't have the ability to raise the additional $100+ billion. They don't know where they're going to get it. So this is a boondoggle. It's a project that'll never be built. And so we pulled our $4 billion back. We're not going to give it. And again, that wouldn't even matter because California can't raise the money. This is so expensive. But by the way, I'm not opposed to high-speed rail. It'd be great to have high-speed rail in America. Yeah. But if you're going to spend billions of dollars to make promises of high-speed rail, build the damn rail. Yeah. Let's have rail and show Americans what high-speed rail looks like. Yeah. But that was not this project. And Gavin Newsom's out there all angry about it, and the liberals are angry. And I'm like, don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at Donald Trump. You should be mad at your leaders in California who couldn't deliver this project on budget and nowhere near time.
Okay, yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar, back in 2008, when I was in kindergarten, and I still remember this as a kid, by the way, oh, we're going to get the train, right? California voters passed a ballot proposition to fund a high-speed train from LA to San Francisco. The initial budget was about $30 billion. The state at first put forth like $10 billion to see what they could get done. And the completion date was supposed to be the year 2020. That's right. It is, of course, now 2025, and they've only just started laying the tracks for it this month. Okay? Imagine me. It's not that, 2025, they're about to complete it. They just started laying the tracks, and frankly, the only reason they did that was for political reasons, to try to prove, look, Gavin Newsom, President Newsom in the future, he's hoping, can actually do something competently. It's a joke, and perhaps that's not even the most hilarious part of it. The other aspect is that, first of all, the budget has ballooned from $30 billion to $130 billion. How do you get a budget estimate that's off $100 billion? We have absolutely no idea. But in the end, they basically concluded that the train from LA to San Francisco is totally unfeasible. But instead of just saying, okay, we're going to give up, the current plan is to spend $30 billion, the original kind of budget for it, right? To build a high-speed train instead from Merced to Bakersfield. Now, if you know, those of you who don't know what those areas are, we're basically talking about kind of, I don't know if I'd say small towns, but not very big cities, I guess you would say, out in the California Central Valley. It's basically just all agricultural land. And let me just say, again, no offense to those places, we're not exactly talking about LA or San Francisco here. Right? These are not places where someone's saying, oh, Jenny, I can't wait to go on my annual vacation to Merced this year or to Bakersfield this year. Okay. Just for context, guys, here is an aerial view of, this is what Merced looks like. Okay. So this is Merced. That's right. They want to build a high-speed train to this place. Oh, well, people are going to be flocking in, right? And this is, of course, Bakersfield, which is a little bit bigger, but yeah, no, it's a complete joke.
The estimated costs that have shot up from $33 billion to $43 billion.
The project is estimated to cost $68 billion.
A new report shows California's high-speed rail project is costing taxpayers more than $3 million a day. The LA Times reports the budget has grown to $77 billion.
The cost for the project, though, has jumped to nearly $128 billion, much higher than the $33 billion voters approved in 2008.
The project is no longer a $33 billion project. The project's years and years behind. The project's wildly over budget. That doesn't mean it's a bad idea, but it is a bad idea not to be truthful about things.
Gavin Newsom is a bad idea, and so is California's high-speed rail boondoggle. It's now projected to cost $135 billion. For that price tag, we could give every single resident of LA and San Francisco almost 200 free flights. This is the definition of government incompetence and possibly corruption. That's why we're pulling the plug. No more federal funds for this high-speed train to nowhere. President Trump and I won't help Gavin Newsom waste your money.
No, it's not possibly corruption. It's definitely corruption, for reasons we'll explain later. But of course, if you're hearing this price tag and you're hearing how badly behind and over budget the whole project is, a logical person would probably just say, okay, the idea is unfeasible. We should have never done it to begin with. But at this point, it's just not worth it, right? After all, who wants to build a train from Merced to Bakersfield? Either build it to major metro areas. That's what the point of high-speed trains are about, by the way. No country in history has ever said, we're going to build a high-speed train from like one farming agricultural town to another. Now, you might build cargo freights or something like that in order to move agricultural supply, but you're not going to have what we call people, right, necessarily using those high-speed trains. I don't know who's even going from Merced to Bakersfield to begin with, but very likely if they are, they're probably bringing stuff they need in pickup trucks or 18-wheelers, okay? What the heck is the point of a high-speed rail like tourist passenger train? Well, let's, of course, listen to Gavin Newsom's justification for it back in 2019 when he announced that this project would no longer be serving any practical function, but instead be connecting nowhere to nowhere.
The current project, as planned, would cost too much and respectfully take too long. There's been too little oversight and not enough transparency. Right now, there simply isn't a path to get from Sacramento to San Diego, let alone from San Francisco to LA. I wish there were. However, we do have the capacity to complete a high-speed rail link between Merced and Bakersfield. Now, I know some critics are going to say, well, that's a train to nowhere.
Yes.
But I think that's wrong. And for those of you, I know you're out there that just want to throw away this whole project, sort of give up on this whole endeavor, I just offer you this. Abandoning the high-speed rail entirely means we will have wasted billions and billions of dollars with nothing but broken promises, partially fulfilled commitments, and lawsuits to show for it. And with all due respect, I have no interest in sending back $3.5 billion of federal funding that was allocated to this project to President Donald Trump. That fundamentally would have to happen if we just...
Okay, so update 6 years later. This is a video from 2019. He indeed did still have to send that money back to Trump anyway, and is casually admitting that the entire point of wasting taxpayer dollars on a completely useless project is, at least to some degree, partially in order to own Donald Trump, which is, oh yeah, what a fantastic reason to waste taxpayer money. Yeah, Donald Trump is so defeated that you're wasting your own voters' money on this garbage. But as it pertains to the whole logic, secondly, I want to address this that he's pushing of saying, oh, well, we already wasted billions of dollars on it, so we might as well build the train partially to nowhere. That is actually a prime example of what some of you may know as sunk cost fallacy. It is like, right on the money. If I were a high school or college professor teaching economics or business, I would just play this video. This is what sunk cost fallacy looks like, right? He's playing it so directly here, which is, of course, the idea that some people have that, well, because I already invested a bunch of money into something, I might as well not stop now. I might as well just invest more, right? So basically, a business owner might say, if I'm in total about to invest $250,000 and I already invested, say, $150,000 and it's not really gone anywhere, well, I already put in this much. I might as well go forward with this business even though it's not working. Or maybe a more personal example that people can understand. So imagine you're at the casino, right? And you're already down like $2,000 that day. You're just losing all the freaking slots or the games or whatever. And you say, well, I already spent all this money, so I might as well just keep spending more. Well, of course, here's the problem with that logic. Sure, you already spent all that money, but at a certain point, there's reason to say cut your losses, right? Because at a certain, if the business is not working with the first $150K of investment and you don't think it's going to work at the next $250K, why go forward with completing it? It's a failed idea. Get out and cut the losses, right? Same thing at the casino. Okay, you lost $2,000 that day, but you could lose all your money that day if you keep on playing, and clearly you keep on freaking losing. And it's the same logic here, right? So instead of saying, look, we lost a bunch of money on this, it was a bad idea, we're just going to give up, he's going to say, we're going to keep on building this, keep on spending money, spend more money, right? In order to, yes, build a useless train to nowhere. What is the point of that? Of course, there is no point, right? For those of you on the East Coast who maybe don't understand what's happening here, imagine like the federal government said they're going to basically turn I-95 or build like a high-speed train along I-95. It's going to go at least all the way from like Boston and New York to Miami or something like that. And in the end, they say, oh, well, we can't afford it. We spent too much money. So instead, don't worry, guys. We're going to have a train that goes instead from like, I don't know, let's say Raleigh, North Carolina to Asheville, North Carolina, something like that, right? Like some small city that not a lot of people go to. You probably look at that and say, what the heck is the point of that? Who's going to use it? If clearly it's not going to work, then why would you put more money into something that's already a failure? That's Gavin Newsom. That's, of course, engaging in sunk cost fallacy. Well, that said, the Trump administration, Trump, of course, being a man with some degree in business, as you know, right? Some degree of experience in business, I should say. Of course, this year announced no more funding for the high-speed rail. We're not going to do it. Gavin Newsom tried to sue him for that, saying, how dare you not, waste taxpayer money on the train to nowhere. Well, that said, we did just get the update here this month that we'll tell you about in this video. California, according to Politico, has now given up on receiving federal high-speed rail funding. State officials said that the federal government under President Trump is, quote, not a reliable, constructive, or trustworthy partner on the controversial project. Well, yeah, he should not be a reliable or constructive or trustworthy partner, because what reason does he have to be? But that said, here are those details. California has ended a lawsuit challenging the termination of $4 billion in federal grants for its controversial high-speed rail project, ceding its claim to federal funding that the Trump administration has repeatedly tried to withdraw. They filed the motion to dismiss just last week after his office had filed in July, after the Federal Railroad Administration nixed $4 billion in Obama and Biden era grants. Now, I want you to take a listen to the justification they're going to use, because when you read through the lines, it's actually kind of proving something very important that we've been bringing up a lot, especially as it pertains to Minnesota. But California, it's worth noting, arguably a lot much worse with this fraud problem. See if you notice what I notice. The California High-Speed Rail Authority said in a statement that the agency has decided to cut ties with the Trump administration, which has also threatened other pots of federal funding tied to the planned rail line connecting LA to the Bay Area, which, let's correct that. That's not where it's going anymore. But this action reflects the state's assessment that the federal government is not a reliable, constructive, or trustworthy partner in advancing high-speed rail in California, the statement had said. The Trump administration here responded by saying, under the president's leadership, yeah, we are protecting billions of taxpayer dollars from funding California's ridiculous train to nowhere. But does anyone notice the timing about this? Let's make note of that. So it was recently, just a couple weeks ago, basically, that the whole Minnesota fraud scandal started to become a national story. And what was kind of at the core of that? Well, the federal government, aka the Trump administration, were basically going to a blue state and actually auditing their funding and where they're sending money to, and basically saying on many different levels, right? Medicaid, food stamps, welfare fraud, fake nonprofits, all this stuff. Your state is massively corrupt, and now we're going to shine an eye on that. Notably, right when that happens, this is very interesting, California drops their lawsuit. Why is that? As I would argue, right? Because first of all, as it comes to depositions and what they'd have to actually show in court, they would have to respond and address the claims as to why the California train has been such a disaster. And let me just say, I don't think those reasons and the things they'd have to kind of admit legally would bode so well for them. But secondly, notice this, right? They're no longer a reliable, constructive, or trustworthy partner. What do they mean by that? AKA, even if the federal funding is reinstated, they know that it's going to come with the caveat the government is now going to be looking basically with a microscope to see where that money is going, which means we can't funnel it to a bunch of corrupt contractors anymore. See where I'm going? So I think actually the calculated move here that Gavin Newsom is making is basically saying, well, we would rather continue in our corruption instead of, actually kind of pretend to build the train, in which case the federal government will have some leverage over us, if that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? They don't want federal eyes to be on the project for a very obvious reason, because when we hear these numbers, for example, how did it go from $30 billion to $130 billion? Let me actually explain that, right? Because some people write it off as government incompetence, and to a degree, that's true. I mean, sure, with government contracting and bureaucracy, this stuff is sort of bound to happen. But what's really going on is that basically the government will contract to some construction company for, let's just say $10 billion and say, okay, you're going to build this, this, and this. Well, the contractor wants to make as much money as possible. And so they're actually with the incentive to, because the state's going to keep on paying them, right? Work as slowly as possible, be as over budget as possible, right? And basically be as inefficient as possible. So then they're going to go back to the state and say, well, we used your $10 billion in 1 year of project time. And look, we barely built anything. Your estimate was wrong. Please give us more money. And the state basically has been saying, okay, more money. Fine. Now build it now. Build it now. And it just keeps on ballooning. Now, you could argue to a degree, oh, that's just naive liberals not understanding how to efficiently manage a project. But again, after learning what we did about Minnesota, are you serious? You really think that's what's happening? Or do you think rather it's intentional corruption to say, hey, maybe lay one hammer and nail, and then we'll just send you a bunch of money, and then, all these kickbacks, and it all goes back. That's what's really going on, okay? That's why Gavin Newsom basically said it's smarter to not have Trump looking at what we're actually spending the money on. Even their little PR response here essentially admits to that, right? Here's their justification. Why are we building this train basically from nowhere to nowhere? Okay, well, the Gavin Newsom press office responded by saying, nope, the project has just entered the track laying phase. 16,000 jobs created so far. Oh, really? Okay, job creation through public works. Yeah. I'm not saying it's always a bad thing. But we will also point out, historically, for like all of history in more countries than just America, usually one of the most kind of corrupt ways to buy votes and buy influence, right? Here's a public job or something, and here's a contract to basically do nothing. Yeah, I mean, that's how it works, right? You know, the liberals love to talk about the military-industrial complex, which is definitely a real thing, but it's worth noting that business model basically functions a lot in other places as well, right? A lot of places that liberals enjoy, and this is what it looks like. But yeah, in short, that's what's going on here. It's actually a very classic, age-old case of political corruption. And this is the same reason, by the way, for those of you who maybe are familiar with this, the whole bridge to Sicily thing, the same reason why Italy can't build a bridge to Sicily, because although it would be expensive and difficult, ultimately it is possible. But the issue there is that the mafia basically owns all of the construction companies in that region of Italy. And, you know, every time they try to build it, the contractors do the same thing. They just like, they don't really work. They take a bunch of money and they're like, oh, you know, it doesn't seem like we can build it. We need more money, it just balloons to the point where it's completely unfeasible. It happens in other countries. You think it's immune to happening in California or America? I mean, just look at this video right here. Yeah, that, of course, tells you everything you need to know, right? Look at that. Yeah, no tracks. Where are the tracks for this high-speed train, huh? What's going on there? Yeah. They carved a bunch of dirt after 17 years. I mean, fantastic job. By the way, this is the governor saying that we need illegal aliens for the labor market. Well, clearly, if that's the case, the illegals aren't doing a very good job. Although I would argue it really has nothing to do with that. But yeah, anyways, guys, there you have it. So just another prime case of political corruption that clearly no one's ever going to go to jail for, even though taxpayers yet again get robbed on another different issue in another blue state. Are you starting to notice a pattern? This is kind of just what Democrats do every time they claim, oh, we're going to fix something. We're going to improve public works or, you know, public services every single time, right? You wonder, where's my public services then? Where's my public works? Hey, if I'm going to vote liberal, if I'm going to pay high taxes, then sure, at least give me a high-speed train or something like that. I don't know if I'm going to use it, but at least show me that the government does something. You wonder where that goes? It literally just gets stolen. And that's, of course, the real story here on California High-Speed Rail. I hate when people say it's just about incompetence. No, it's more than that. It's freaking money laundering, essentially, right? So there you have it, guys, though. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.